What's up, guys? For my project today, I did Newton's Car Trouble by me, Dylan Patel. Question asked. My question is, how does Newton's laws keep a passenger safe during a car crash? And some questions to think of during the presentation is, how do seatbelts hold a passenger in during a car crash? What happens if a passenger doesn't wear a seatbelt? What laws do airbags use to reduce the impact of a collision? How does friction affect tires? How do crumple zones absorb the force of impact? And how do all three laws work together simultaneously during the car crash? Some brief history before the new technology is many cars in the 1950s didn't have much safety precautions. No seatbelts, no brakes or poor brakes or tires, non collapsible steering columns, doors that open on impact, so not so great doors, and just windshields glasses that were just easy to shatter. So it just wasn't a good model of a car that kept people safe. This resulted in more than 30,000 people dying as a result of traffic incidents in the 1950s, and the number increased more than 50% 2 decades later. So many car companies were forced to install seatbelts, better brakes, airbags, turn signals, and better doors to protect people inside the car and drivers around them. A brief recap on Newton's three laws are: the first law states that an object will continue its motion at constant velocity unless another force acts on it. Otherwise, it'll stay in motion. So if you roll a ball, it will continue to roll unless another force acts on it, like your foot or a chair or something like that, will force it to stop. The second law states that the acceleration of an object is multiplied by the mass, which is proportional to the force. Mathematically, just saying that force equals mass times acceleration, or force equals mass times displacement over time. And the third law states that in every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction on it. Another thing that you have to look at during a car crash is friction. Static friction is the force that resists the initiation of sliding motion between two surfaces. So before you move an object, how much friction does it have before it can be moved off of the ground or moved somewhere else? And kinetic friction is the force that opposes the movement of two surfaces. So when you move an object, how much force does it have? How much friction or force or friction does it have while you're moving it? Seatbelts. Seatbelts allow the person to stay attached inside the car while the car moves. When the car accelerates in any type of way, the passenger does too. When a person in a car crash is not wearing their seatbelt, they will move at the same velocity as when the car was moving before it was in the car crash, which means that if they're not wearing a seatbelt, they will fly out of their seat into the windshield at constant velocity, which is Newton's first law. When a person has a seatbelt on during a car crash, the person will experience the same amount of force with the seatbelt on, and the seatbelt will exert that force back onto the passenger, which is Newton's third law. And this graph shows how many people have been saved due to seatbelts since 1975 to 2008. Airbags. Airbags are made to inflate in a collision before the passenger body is thrown forward onto the dash of the steering wheel, like how the picture shows how once he got into the accident, the airbags inflated and he collided with them. This allows a passenger to decelerate to zero during a crash at a slower rate. It can be shown using force equals mass times acceleration, with the mass being multiplied by displacement over time. So using Newton's second law, if it takes longer for a passenger and the car to decelerate to zero, that means the total force exerted on the passenger will decrease, causing less impact on the passenger. Crumple zones. Crumple zones are areas in the car that are meant to crumple in the crash, causing the car to stop as slow as possible. But their main purpose is to absorb all the energy during the crash, meaning less energy is forced onto the passenger. As you see in the picture, the crumple zones are in the front of the car and the back of the car, making the middle of the car the safest place with both sides crumpling together. Tires. Tires are made to move the car, obviously, but they are also there to grip onto the road for better control of the car. The friction between the tires and the road allow the tires to push onto the road. So the road pushes back on the tires, creating more acceleration, causing this to accelerate the car because the unbalanced force. As you see in the picture, as the tire moves, it rolls down, friction's moving back on it, causing them to move forward. How do these work together, though? Each individual part of the car has a purpose to protect the passenger in the event of a crash. And many car companies use the knowledge of Newton's laws to create a technology that keeps the passenger safe. The three laws are used to determine the net force of the collision, which is Newton's second law, causing advances to be made like airbags and crumple zones to reduce the amount of force exerted onto the passenger and to reduce the amount of time to decelerate to protect the passenger. And with seatbelts, there's an equal and opposite reaction that goes on when you're clicked into the seatbelt, causing the passenger to stay in the seat that they're in and keeping them as safe as possible during this car crash. Advancements today. So many car companies still know that accidents do still happen, and they take every precaution to keep that passenger still safe. Many cars today include an auto braking system or an ABS, a better steering system, and autonomous driving or a cruise control, if you could say, that just keeps the passenger safe as much as they can. And many cars are even equipped with sensors that sense when objects are around them from the front, the sides, and the rear to keep that passenger as safe as possible. This is my Works Cited page. I got most of my sources from Gale, a couple websites, and the book. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned about car safety.